The Japanese prior to the Second World War accidentally stumbled across the capabilities of underwater shots. Firing tests against battleships showed that near misses under some circumstances traveled below the waterline, and were still powerful enough to struck the hull, which was not protected against shellfire underwater, thus allowing for hits directly into the vital parts of the ship. As you can see here on this midship cross-section of a typical third-generation battleship, here's the deck armor and here's the stronger belt armor. Although the deck armor was weaker, the incoming shots were usually angled, thus they sometimes bounced. Now for the test firing conducted against the battleship Tosa, we know that the shot was 25 meters short and entered the water at a 17-degree angle, and it traveled right below the waterline beneath the belt armor into the engineering spaces, resulting in major damage. Based on these experiences, the Japanese did some more testing and development. Later tests showed that the properly designed shell, one with a flat head, could hit the water as far as 80 meters short of the target and still penetrate the hull as long as it entered the water at an optimum angle of 17 degrees. At 40 meters the underwater trajectory was best and damage at a maximum. Further tests and development led to the Type 91 armor-piercing shell, which had a dual-purpose projectile. If it hit armor, it had the cap for penetration, but if it hit the water, the windshield and cap would break off, and the shell was flat-headed, ideal for underwater travel. As a result, Japanese fire control doctrine focused on achieving short misses instead of over misses. The shells were also equipped with a time delay fuse, thus it was theoretically possible that the underwater shots would explode below the ship, which would cause even greater damage than a penetration. Yet soon this technique called Suichudan underwater shots was classified as top secret, thus there was no training in peace. Another flaw was that the distance was rather restricted at 20 kilometers for a large gun and 18 kilometers for 20 centimeter guns. Generally it sounds like a great idea, yet practically there were many problems. Besides the lack in specific training and range requirements, there were other issues too. American naval technicians assumed that the long delay fuse that allowed the shells to explode underwater would result in passing through penetrations in case of direct hits. The conclusion of the US naval technical mission to Japan after the war was: it would appear that, to some extent, they sacrificed the effectiveness of their ammo-piercing projectiles on occasion of direct hitting, in order to achieve a doubtful hit through water or a mining effect, for which an AP projectile is singularly poorly designed. Additionally, US designers in the 1930s became aware of the problem, and as a result, battleships classes like the North Carolina, South Dakota and Iowa were improved in various ways to have better protection against underwater hits. Yet the question still remains, historically, how did the underwater shot turn out? The naval historian Norman Friedman notes the following: as it happened, the Japanese achieved exactly one of the desired underwater hits against the cruiser Boys, whose magazine did not explode. Other navies, which had not planned for underwater hits, did at least as well. Although since the publication of Friedman's book, a new detailed book about the Battle of Samar by Robert Lundgren was released. This book adds a second confirmed success of an underwater shot, yet not a direct hit, but the aforementioned mining effect, where the shell explodes beneath the keel of the ship. The escort carrier White Plains action report continued. The second salvo fired at this vessel was a 6 salvo, and a perfect enclosed rattle, believed to be major caliber AP shells. The ship was severely shocked and twisted. One shell apparently exploded under the ship at the turn in the bulge, about frame 142 port, with the resulting mining effect. Shock throughout both generators, resulting in complete loss of power. And it gets a bit more interesting, because these shots were fired by the super battleship Yamato. Yet although the underwater explosion did some major damage, it didn't sink the White Plains, which was an escort carrier, thus a rather unprotected ship, which seems to confirm the technical mission statement that AP shells are not particularly suited for the mining effect. To conclude, although the idea and technique was great on paper, it had several flaws. First off, it required specifically designed shells that had a reduced effectiveness in case of direct hits. Second, the specific range requirements made this technique rather restrictive, which also brings us to the third point, namely not accounting for the enemy to have figured out the threat, or properly reacting to it. The later point is also reflected by the Japanese staff planners that implicitly assumed in their tactics that the enemy would be rather passive. Special thanks to Justin for helping me out on this video. As always, sources are in the description. If you want to know more about the war in the Pacific, check out this video. Or maybe you want to learn more about Japanese bomber tactics. which is so far my best illustrated video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.